I call the April 19, 2016 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Juniper Ridge Landfill Expansion Update. Bill, can you introduce who we have here tonight?
Yes, we have Jim Katsifikis, who handles legal aspects for us, and Dennis St. Peter from CES, who will handle technical aspects as whole Juniper Ridge landfill expansion moves forward. Just to kind of go over where we're at right now, last fall there were 4 milestone meetings that were held that Casella put on, invited city staff, Jim, DEP was there, our solid waste review committee attended those. I see Chuck Lighthouser's in the crowd tonight. I don't remember if you were at some of those or not. Ed Spencer was there. And basically during those milestone meetings, they went through their entire permit application with DEP, gave folks an opportunity to hear that, to ask questions about it. After that, Jim and I met with the Solid Waste Review Committee. They had some questions. We've brought those forward to a March 24th meeting that we held with Casella between Jim and Dennis and myself to discuss some of those. Which brings us to tonight's meeting, just to update you folks before we move on to talk with DEP, which will be soon coming in May. So we're progressing along with this, and if you have any questions tonight, this is a perfect time with our legal and technical team sitting here. If you run into anything you want to ask, or afterwards, if you think of something later on, I mean, just shoot me an email and I can get it out to these gentlemen, and they will get answers back to us.
So where is the meeting in May? Is that here, or is that down in Augusta?
The meeting in May is going to be a procedural meeting. It's going to be in Augusta.
In Augusta, okay. You guys can come right up. Is that mic working, Bill? I'm assuming
Yes,
it is?
should be.
Can you hear me now? There we go. Okay.
And Ed, I had mentioned to Chuck, once they get done the presentation, if you guys got some quick questions, go right ahead.
Thanks.
All right. As you know, the application is in front of DEP, and actually the DEP commissioner sent this up to the Board of Environmental Protection, which happens in cases of major state significance. So BEP has jurisdiction. BEP is going to be holding hearings in October. To get ready for that, the staff has asked us to come back with whatever issues we have and to submit those issues and who would be testifying on them by May 13th. There'll then be the procedural meeting that Mayor Mahan was mentioning on May 18th for us to sit down and talk about how we're going to process this and go forward. During the summer, we'll be putting together what's called pre-filed testimony. Probably Dennis and probably Bill will have their testimony entered into the record on some of the technical matters that will be coming up, and I'll just be making sure the procedure works smoothly and we get our arguments in front of the board. In order to prepare for this, as Bill suggested, we met with the Solid Waste Facility Review Committee last fall, well, actually in December. Bill's also talked to all the department heads just to make sure, what are the issues that we see for traffic, for police, for odor, for noise? What are the complaints? How's the process been going? To try to make sure everybody's on board here. We followed up on the issues that had been raised by the Solid Waste Review Facility Committee. And the issue that we'd raised in the prior proceedings in front of DEP were the issues were noise, odor, litter, vectors, disease vectors, leachate, how are we going to treat the runoff from this landfill, and traffic. So, and those are many of the same sorts of concerns that are raised in any landfill review, whether it's in a continuing one or an expansion like this. And so Dennis has been looking at many of those technical issues. And we met just a few weeks ago with NewsMe, which is the formal name for the company that runs the landfill for Casella. Casella and BGS, the Bureau of General Services, because that's who the landlord is. It's the state of Maine who owns that and leases it out to Casella. So we met with them to raise some of the concerns that we had going through the review, and I think it's fair to say that they addressed many of those concerns. And so we'll go through those on the legal and policy side for me, and then on the technical side for Dennis. Once we're done our presentations, what we would like is some direction from you as to what you would like us to follow up on as we raise issues to go forward. So I put together a memo to try to address the specific issues. The first one, it was raised by our Solid Waste Review Facility Committee, and that was construction and demolition debris. Casella used to be in the demo debris, the CDD business of handling it, processing it, and then would have all the waste left, fines that go to the bottom of the pit. It doesn't own that anymore. That's Re-Energy that now owns that facility in Lewiston. But in both instances, what they've been doing is using the fines as alternate daily cover. They put some waste down in the landfill. They need to cover it with a certain amount of material to prevent odor from coming through, to prevent rainwater from getting in, just to try to cover each day's disposition of waste. So they can use CDD as alternate daily cover. In fact, that is something that's urged and encouraged by the state of Maine and its regulations and our legislation. Now, one concern the committee had is, well, are we being paid for it? And are they using more than they have to so they can sneak it in, perhaps, and get free disposal of something? Well, the answer is that they're using no more alternative daily cover, or alternate daily cover, than anyone else. They're using approximately 20% as opposed to 24% at other landfills. And with regard to payment under the host community agreement that we have with Casella and the state, so long as Casella charges under $5 a ton, and they make a beneficial use out of this, and they don't need formal approval of beneficial use to make that case, they don't have to pay for disposal. So they are not paying for disposal. That's in line with our agreement. It's not violating the agreement, and they're not sneaking more in there than they are allowed to. So that was a concern that was raised, and we ran it down with Casella, with Bureau of General Services, and I think we've answered it responsibly. It's material that's allowed to be there without payment, and it takes the place of dirt. The only concern may be one that's technical, and that is a lot of this is wallboard, gypsum wallboard that's broken down, and that has a high sulfur content. When that breaks down over time, you get hydrogen sulfide compounds. And some of those can be fairly stinky, as we all may remember from high school chemistry lab. So that's something from a technical perspective that we'll want to run down a little bit more. But as far as the legality of using it and not paying for it, it's perfectly legal and appropriate under the state law and state regulation. Next issue that they raised was soft layer waste. Dennis will talk a little bit about the landfill liner, because when you have something like this, it's like a big tub. And you need to have a very strong liner, a robust liner system that will protect the groundwater. So you don't want that liner damaged. What DEP has allowed here and has encouraged is the use of solid waste to protect the liner. It's called the soft layer. And so when they had waste pile-up bypass on the floor at Merck, back when it was in operation down at Biddeford and in Perk, they have been allowed to use that bypass waste as the soft layer to protect the liner, and then they can put more waste on top of it and build it up. The question the committee had is, are we being paid for that? And fair question, because they don't break it out on the bill. You see how much tonnage came in for the month, but it doesn't say this is soft layer waste. It's municipal solid waste, or bypass. So Bill checked, and Casella has been paying. Their bookkeeper got in touch, Bill reviewed it, they have been paying for this soft layer waste. So they aren't getting away with anything there either. They're paying their fair share, and that's appropriate. The next issue we brought up was Bennick Road, and that's something that Public Works here in town and Bill have noticed, particularly on road corners. You have trucks that are using Bennick Road to get between exits 193 and 199 on the turnpike. And the reason is they see the light go on at the weigh station and they don't want to stop. They don't want to take the time. They don't want to have their trucks weighed. That's nice, but especially the empty truck swinging around the corner on the way back is a problem, and it does damage the Bennick Road. Bennick Road is an interesting one because the northern half of it is something that is Maine Department of Transportation's responsibility to maintain. The bottom half of it is within the urban compact area. So it's a state road, but because that state or state aid highway is on the southern half, within the urban compact area of Old Town, it's Old Town's responsibility to maintain it and then is reimbursed on a per mile basis by the state. The state did, Bill tells me, about an inch of overlay on the northern part last year, but that's been about it, and that didn't do the rebuild on the corners that have been worn away by the trucks and the trailers swinging around. Now, the state will say, well, gee, there are gravel trucks that are using this road, there are dump trucks, but they're dump trucks, not tractor-trailer trucks. And so although it's a small percentage, perhaps, in terms of total traffic, it's still a fair amount of significant truck traffic that's damaging the Benneck Road. So when we spoke with these folks, Casella stated, and we believe them, that they are telling truck drivers, do not use the Benneck Road. They say they have signage there. It's their policy to discourage it. We have every reason to believe them. The problem is you tell someone what to do. They don't have police authority, and we don't want to be assigning trash police to try to make sure that the tractor trailers are following the law all the time. What we asked for was whether the Maine Department of Transportation, as the state's contribution, since the state's owner of this facility, could do something to help us out. And so they have gone back and checked, and indeed, it's scheduled for rehabilitation work. The northern half that MDOT is responsible for, it's scheduled for work in the 2016-2017 work plan. There's a significant amount, over $1 million that's been budgeted to work on the southerly part. One thing I suggest in the memo, it's Bill and I discussed, what do we do? There are two things we brainstormed that could help. And one would be maybe at the beginning, this is a new, a new life for the landfill in the sense of 9.35 million cubic yards will be added. It will get at about 8 to 10 years of additional capacity. This would be the time to ask for the state to make a one-time contribution, perhaps, for the city to work on its half of the road, to do some major renovations to it to try to bring it up to snuff. And then once the state pays for its rebuild of the northern half, and if we do some work on the southern half, what's to prevent it from getting back into disrepair because truck drivers do what they're not supposed to do? And so we brainstormed some more and thought, well, maybe DOT could put a sign up so that when you're leaving the Casella facility, when you're leaving that landfill, there's a sign that says, you shall take the highway. All trucks must use the highway. Again, can you enforce it? Do we want to hire a police officer to be there? No, but it's another reminder. If Casella is doing its job, the state can do its job too to try to get people not to use that road. So those are the two things we suggest would be appropriate to bring up in all of this. And the state, with Casella, is a partner in that landfill. I think it's entirely appropriate to ask the state to do something to help out here too.
Just a quick question. So you said on the southern part of the Benneck Road that the city could do some stuff and the state would reimburse us?
We do the maintenance already.
We do, right. So any maintenance that we do, the state reimburses us now?
No.
They don't.
It's under the URIP program?
Well,
not much.
That's what threw me off in this.
Yeah, I mean, we dedicate that to a lot of different roads.
Okay.
Besides that, in following up on that highway rehab work, John looked into that, and probably Dennis will make fun of my terminology here. I probably won't get it all right. They're going to bring a pug mill in from the off-ramp, basically up at the Alton exit.
Right.
They're going to go from there to the Rogers farm. And what they're going to do is they put reclaim in there. They mix it with some cement, I believe. They're going to reprofile the surface of the road to try to get it pitched correctly and to get it crowned correctly. They're not going to do any shoulder work on it, but they're going to try to get the shape of the road right. Then they're going to go back out and resurface that whole section, which it's not a complete rebuild of the road, but it will be a major improvement to the road over what's there right now.
Right. And I think I remember now when we were saying this, like that urban thing, I think we do use those funds. We spread them out.
On UREP.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That's all right. We'll get our roads straightened out. One thing that won't do, though, is there won't be any ditching of that road then. So there'll still be a drainage issue, but it'll be crowned at least to try to get some water off. So, the suggestion is maybe we can ask for a little money to some significant amount of money to help rebuild the southern part that we do have to work on, and then see what the state can do to at least create some signage out there to get trucks off the road so that once it's fixed, it doesn't fall into disrepair right away. The fourth issue, legal policy type thing, is wetlands are going to be disturbed by this construction. And when there's a small amount of wetland disturbance, it's not a big deal. But when it starts being significant, then at that point you have to provide some kind of compensation. The one part of the compensation package that Casella and Newsme and BGS are proposing is to put a declaration of restrictions and covenants on about 266 acres of that parcel that JRL's on. And it would be a forever wild, shall not be disturbed type of thing. But it would allow for trails and recreational easements, and recreational uses, I should say. So whenever you have any kind of conservation restrictions like that, you need a third party to enforce it, so that complaints can go to a third party, and that third party then can measure what's going on, can call the authorities, can go to court to enforce the declaration of covenants if necessary. And the third party under the draft that's been submitted is the city. So the city would have the obligation under this. Now, for example, what does it mean for the city? The state, with the consent of Casella, Newsme, and the city, could put new recreational trails out on that parcel. And it could also improve the existing trails a bit and could invite the public onto the whole trail section. And the city would be responsible for maintaining them. So there'd be some cost for maintaining the trails. What's interesting is there's a law that limits liability for recreational use on your property. So if people come by with their skidoos or whatever and you allow them to, there's a limitation of liability unless you go out there and actively do something that would cause a potential for harm. You're generally off the hook. It's there whether we claim it or not, but this declaration of covenants specifically exempts the state and specifically exempts Newsme under that statute and doesn't include us, even though we're the third party. So we're getting thrown under the skidoo there. No, not quite. We still have the protections from liability in the statute. It would be nice if they mentioned us as well, given that we have the obligation. The state has to give the city at least 60 days advance written notice before undertaking any activity that might violate the agreement or might have an adverse effect on the purposes of the declaration. It gives us the opportunity to evaluate, will this cause a problem, and maybe even go to court to stop it if we think it would violate the agreement. But then it's an obligation on the city, and someone's going to take the time to take a look at the agreement, the proposed activities, see if they're consistent, and take action if not. The city engineer has authority to direct and approve the state's proposal to use its right to grade and landscape the property. We can appoint someone to be an inspector, go on, and then the inspection reports have to be kept on file. We have to provide copies of inspection reports to the state. If there's a breach, we have to notify DEP, a breach of this agreement and some of the requirements. So there are some obligations on the part of the city that do have some cost. There are also some indemnifications and some releases from liability. The state can get attorney's fees against us if we act wrongfully under this agreement, and we can get our attorney's fees if the state acts wrongly under the agreement. This is all wonderful, but these are obligations that are here to try to help the project go forward. I understand Casella has come in and has spoken with the council about this, but
Last September at a committee meeting.
And
no action was taken.
Right. I understand no action was taken. I think because no action was taken, it was assumed that you'd agree. Or not. I don't know. But at any rate, this has been submitted with the city having the third-party enforcement role. There is some cost. Casella has said that it would pay, whatever the cost would be.
Right.
The interesting thing is the city's obligation to be a third party is, like these covenants, in perpetuity. Perpetuity, as Bill and I have discussed, is a long time. And whether Casella will have the wherewithal 100 years from now, whether anyone will care 100 years from now, I don't know, but this is an ongoing obligation that we're locking ourselves into. So I bring it out as an issue that you might want to think about. You don't have to make a decision tonight. We're not on, this is more of a workshop than anything else. But that's what's being asked. Often these third-party enforcement roles are held by land trusts. They're set up for this purpose. They have inspectors. They have access to engineers and all who do this sort of thing. This is a little bit out of the usual scope of work for the city of Old Town or most municipalities.
You weren't here that night that they presented to us?
I don't think I was here for that extravaganza.
Yeah,
Not
I
on
don't
that one.
believe so.
It sounds to me that you're not too keen on the idea.
I just want you to know what you're getting into. It's not horrible, but these are ongoing obligations that you'd be assuming forever unless someone were to undo this agreement. And usually you have to go to the Attorney General's office to try to undo these sorts of covenants and restrictions like a conservation easement.
I'm trying to think. I thought it was presented to us that it was best for the city to be the third party. That way we do have some control over it. I think that's how it was presented to us. We'd rather us have the control than
Sure.
another, like
Well-
you say, another group have control. This way, I'm pretty sure that's how it was presented to us that night. And I think we all were shaking our head. That makes sense. But
And it does, but all things have their price.
right.
And so do you want, again, Casella says that they would hold you harmless in terms of the money.
Yes, they
for
said
this.
that we didn't have to pay anything. Correct.
And if we can get an agreement to that effect, that's fine. It's just that that agreement is good for however long Casella remains at the table.
Okay.
And yet your obligations keep going onward. I think that's probably the thing that's the bigger concern for me. I understand the desire to have control, especially when we're talking about recreational trails, things that might be of use for the citizens.
And I'm not even sure if that was even, I mean, they mentioned that, but I think it was more the fact that we would have control of anything that was going to go in there. I didn't think anybody here was saying, let's go spend $10,000 to build trails or anything like that. I think it was the
Sure.
fact that we would have the final say of what was going to happen on that property. But
And there's value to that,
we have until next month anyways, right, to
at
give you the
least.
heds up to.
at least.
Would
And
it be possible to word that the Casella and/or the state would be responsible to us? Because the state's probably gonna be here there as long as we are.
I'm hoping.
And it is their land technically.
Correct, to state landfill, correct.
I think that's what we pitch. So you have the control, but you're not burdened by the expense. And that's really the concern, to make sure that, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, I mean, the lease is only for 30 years anyway.
Right.
But you're signing on for forever.
Yeah, I really think that the idea that night was the fact that we would have control so nobody else could go in there and do something on that land. I think that was a selling point to us.
Okay.
But I like what Stan said too, if we can,
I'll get back to the Attorney General's office and to DEP on this one.
okay. Thank you.
All right. So that's really all I have. I mean, that was that issue, and then the two issues with regard to the road, getting the state to kick in some money to do an improvement on the southern half and getting the state to put up a sign to protect everything once it's all done. And those are the big legal and other policy issues that I saw on this that I wanted to identify for you.
And like you said on the signs, I mean, we can put up whatever. It's just whether people follow that or not. It's going to be a whole different story. But at least if there's one up there, there's something to hold them to.
Right. Casella's doing its part. Let's see if the state will do its part.
Right.
Is it possible to limit that to tractor trailers or through tractor trailers? Instead, that would allow the dump trucks and stuff like that to travel over that road to get through.
So they could still go
Right.
through there.
Right. All we're talking about, Stan, is saying that there'll be a sign when you come
I
out
know,
of.
but I'm saying, can we make a
Yeah,
ordinance, or can the state pass,
it's a state highway.
can they say no through tractor trailers on this road? I mean, if we're controlling the southern end, can we say that as a city, no through tractor trailers?
We're maintaining the southern end. It's a state highway.
I understand, but
I-
if we're
I don't-
responsible for maintaining it, that would help us maintain it if we didn't allow that.
We can ask MDOT if they could limit it so that there are no tractor trailers on that. Are there any other businesses, though, that are in Old Town or?
Well, when he's saying tractor trailer, so it's still like Folsoms, everybody else, the dump trucks, they could still operate.
Right.
Yeah, they could, right, we're saying strictly tractor
Right.
trailer, so we would be, I agree with that part of it on our, you can at least ask
You
the
never
state.
say through tractor trailers, because sometimes, freight trucks and stuff
Right.
like that come out and make deliveries out there, but
So, okay,
we can just do that for the southern end, the part that we're responsible to maintain. They can do whatever they want to for the top half,
Fair enough.
northern half.
We can ask for that.
Before we move on, any questions for Jim? Before we move on to we're on the legal aspect, before we move on to technical. Anything else for Jim? You guys, any questions for Jim on this part of it? Yeah, just come right up to the microphone.
Chuck Lighthizer from 4th Street in Old Town. With that kind of conservation easement or that you were just talking about, if that land were to become contaminated and need some sort of environmental remediation, who would be on the hook for paying for that?
Good question.
The owner. We would not be the owner.
We're not the owner, okay, so it would be the state.
Third-party enforcement rights would not mean that we would be responsible
We'd be
unless
turning
we
them
did
in.
something that
Good question, Chuck. Very good question.
it is.
Ed, any questions for Jim?
Yeah, I got a couple of comments, questions. And this is a comment for starters, no real order here. I think Jim mentioned that something about, how they present the different categories of waste, and the whole accounting thing there, it just seems almost designed to confuse people. So I think some attention should be paid to that. As far as odors, the way the rules work, we don't need to go into it, but it is really, really hard to file an official, Casella gets to decide if it's an official odor complaint, right? And it's almost impossible. So they say we only had 12 complaints last year and only 2 of them were legitimate. Well, you got to stop what you're doing if you complain. They got to send someone over. That person who works at a dump has to say, oh yeah, it smells. Well, there's a thing called olfactory fatigue. Like people who work at the mill all those years, they lose some of their sense of smell. So, but actually 3 weeks ago it smelled so bad at my house, I couldn't go out and work. I should get the date for you. So I called the hotline, and I got the answering machine. So I jumped in my vehicle, and I went right over there. And I got there. I don't know if you've seen the new gas filtration system there. It's relatively new. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. They got these big, like, silos full of, Dennis is smiling because he knows what I'm talking about, to try to pull the sulfur out of the gases before you burn it off, So anyways, I go in there, and no one, I didn't have to stop at the gate, and I just went around with the window down smelling. I said, well, it smells like kind of over here. So I walk in the place, and you'd think they'd be upset. I've got my logging gear on. I go marching in like this, and they weren't concerned about me barging in. They were all huddled around. There's like 3 or 4 workstations, computers, and they're all looking at this like, what is wrong here, And I guess what had happened was I had called at about 7:25. The flare had gone out at 7:16, and they didn't know why. They thought maybe a power, but whatever. So if that's not an official odor complaint, I don't know what is. And I said, if you check your anemometer, they keep track, they have a weather station there. I said that wind will have been from the northeast at that time of day, I guarantee you, So that could get tightened up, and I don't know what exactly in our municipal ordinances can be done about that. But one thing that could be done is, and I meant to go talk to Chief, is it Wilcox? Just to ask him, if you guys are out on patrol and you smell a strong odor, just make a note of it. This is, this stinks, just like you would if you went by and someone had a pig farm, you know, or a different kind of a farm, or whatever, was burning something they shouldn't have been burning. So that might be something, a little bit of a solution there. As far as the trucks and the Bennick Road, the reason they go on the Bennick Road, I think you find there's like a 99% correlation of when the way station is there. Okay, and that's what happens. What can be done about that? I don't know. Ask the way guys to, you know, park over there once in a while, or I don't know if they can do anything in conjunction with Old Town police or not. But
Put the portable one on the Bennett Road when they light up the other one.
Right.
yeah, so if they just did it, you know, once.
Cutting through, they're gonna have a lot longer wait for the portable one than they are the real one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe ask the state police to, you know, enforce both at the same time. It doesn't have to be all the time. And this conservation easement stuff, I just think it does have some expense to it, and I just think it's a bad deal for the city of Old Town. For one thing, I don't know who wants to go recreate next to the landfill. Another thing, to get to where that is, you either have to go right next to the landfill or on the Stagecoach Road. Well, the Stagecoach Road is the boundary between Old Town and Alton. So to drive in there, basically you're going to be driving through Alton. And if you go down the Stagecoach Road, I know some people live out there, on the way out, on your left is Alton, on your right is Old Town. There are, I guess Old Town won't accept that as a road for building houses. So you go out there, there's house after house on the Alton side, and on the Old Town side, there's nothing. So if you wanted to get access from there, you'd have to put a little parking area out there. That road is junk. So that's, I mean, take a, you know, and just having someone, it's not just making the trails, maintaining the trails. I know we get, you know, some protection from liability, but I would think somebody who does it already, I mean, Hirundo, how many acres do they oversee within Old Town's borders? So Hirundo would be a good one, although I heard they offered it to, not them, but someone else, and got turned down. So I guess, I should tell you too, this this public hearing, you know, involved with this expansion, I am an intervener, right, in opposition to the expansion. Probably everybody knew that already. But my intention is, I want to cooperate with the city. You know, I don't want to be in an adversarial relationship with you. And please, if you think I'm showing too much anger or something, ever, just kind of say, you know.
I always let you know, Chuck.
Yeah.
I mean, Ed.
Yeah, just, you know, turn me down a
Chuck.
little bit. But I'm very interested in seeing what you guys present before, because I'm under the same kind of deadlines. You know, May 13th, to basically have a list of your concerns that you're going to bring up. If you're going to present expert witnesses, I don't think you have to name them, but you have to name what you're going to be talking about with them. And then the testimonies due later on. So I'd love to see what what Dennis and Jim have to say before then, because I think it's going to be a scramble. But I guess that's it for now.
Thank you, Ed. Dennis.
How much time do you want me to spend? 5, 10 minutes?
I figured we'd be good till 7:30 tonight, so you're doing good.
Okay. All right. So we were joking a little bit before that there's over 6,000 pages of this application and supplemental materials with the application. So I know Bill and Jim have mentioned that I'm reviewing it. Well, we have a team of reviewers. There's a lot of areas of expertise that go along with this pretty large application. So what I did was I handed out, let me
copy and scan a copy to these two gentlemen. So I'm sure Ed has already memorized all the pages I just handed out, but but the pages that I handed out are really just visual aids, just to help you understand where the landfill is and what they're doing. So that first page, figure 1-1, and these are all the application materials. These aren't materials that I've created. These are the materials that we're reviewing, and they're just meant to be visual aids for you tonight. Okay. So we are producing. I attended the pre-hearing conference for the BEP with Jim. We have been busy reviewing all the 6,000 pages. We've prepared a draft report so far. Our report so far is about a 20-page document. We're not trying to generate paper, but it's a lot here to talk about and comment on. So the first figure just really shows a USGS map and where the existing landfill is shown with the hatched area is the expansion area. The second figure, figure 2-1, shows the existing cells, which are those little numbers that are circled, 1 through 10, and then the new cells are 11 through 14. Through 16, yeah. So just generally, the blue outline is the new proposed cells. That's what they're applying for,
Right.
the expansion, and the orange area is the existing permitted space. All we're doing, and the DEP warned us, is we're only commenting on the new. We can't comment on this. We can only comment on
Just on the proposed.
the blue area.
While you have that up, if you don't mind me just jumping in, can you just show us real quick where that, the third party, the wetland, that area they talked about? I forgot. They showed us that night, but this looks a little different than what they showed us that night. I was just trying to figure out on that map where it was.
Yeah, I might actually have that figure. It's not shown on figure 1-1, which shows the whole landfill parcel.
I thought it was to the, and this is why I'm sure I'm wrong. I thought it was to the left of number 16 and 13. I thought it was going towards that detention pond and all that. I could be totally wrong.
I thought that too.
Yeah, I've got their wetland disturbance map here, and it doesn't show the mitigation parcel.
Okay.
So we can get
No,
that
it's
back to you,
okay.
but-
They showed us that night, but with your map, it just looked a little different, so I was just trying to figure out where it was.
Okay.
Where are you saying, Stan?
Right in here.
You're saying to the north of that?
Yes.
Okay. On the north side? Okay, up there? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm not positive of that, though.
It does show a fence around it on the other side of the road, too.
And you can see I think it goes right up to the Alton Old Town line.
Yep. That's on the north
It's on the
side.
cover map.
'Cause that's the stagecoach road that Ed was talking about, that line.
You're talking on the first page still?
Yep.
Yeah,
It
right at
says
the
ex-
top.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see where it says Elton, you can see where it says Old Town.
Yes, yep,
Right there.
okay.
We'll
Thank-
confirm. Yep, we can
All right,
confirm
no,
that.
that's fine. Thank you very much.
Yep, so back on to figure 2-1, you see these hatched areas, the red hatching is where they're proposing to put an underdrain system in, and on the blue hatching, they're augmenting the secondary liner system, and I'll get back to that, but this is kind of a key where this is located.
Yep.
And then figure 1-3 is the final build-out elevation of the whole expansion area. So the existing permitted area ties together with the future permitted area so that it'll be one big mound at the end.
Okay.
The application proposes a 10 to 12-year time frame for capacity, and I think that's 9 million plus cubic yards.
Okay.
Table 5-1, the next handout, summarizes all the waste. And I know what Ed is talking about as far as accounting for each individual waste item, so that may be something that we want to consider putting in as an item.
Is this breaking it down better on this sheet? Or are you
This breaks
saying-
it down into large categories,
Okay.
so there's a lot of trucks in and out of that facility all over the state, and
Right.
it is a hard accounting job to do, so
Okay.
I think it might get easier because they don't own the KTI facility anymore. That's a differently owned facility,
I
but
think waste is also coming here.
it is, yeah. You'll see construction and demolition debris process facility fines. That's what Jim was talking about earlier. They're proposing 138,000
Oh, right there.
tons per year.
Tons per year, yep.
Which is 20% of the total tonnage, with 19.7 in this table.
Okay. Hmm.
You see 25,000 tons of MSW bypassed and soft layer material down at the last category. And then some miscellaneous. So I'm trying to give you a high-level, brief
Right.
summary of. Okay, so and here's I think some really good news for the city, and that is this first 11 by 17 sheet is that's the existing permitted landfill design material. So we grabbed this from one of their old designs. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, their liner system, so it's called base liner system.
Mm-hmm.
I brought my glasses so I could read it, but but it's really there's a primary liner system and an underdrain under that. So there's not a secondary liner. So you got the 12 inches of leachate collection on the top, a drainage geocomposite that also drains the leachate that goes through the sand. And then you got an 80 mil HDPE liner. Now that 80 mil is above the standard. It only needs to be, I think, 60, but it's a robust liner. GCL, they got 24 inches of compacted clay, and then their underdrain system below that. Their proposed system is much improved, and that's the next sheet, C-300. And they've got two different liner system designs. They're both on the upper left-hand corner, the liner system, and then there's a liner system right below that with augmented secondary liner. So their new design has got a primary liner system, a composite liner with the still keeping an 80 mil HDPE liner, the GCL, 12 inches of clay as their composite liner, and then they've got a leak detection system that they'll be monitoring. If water gets into that, there will be some water, some of that soil above will fall into there, but there will be some quantity of flow in there, and they've set a really low action leakage rate. They'll be monitoring that to know if there's any leaks, and they have to take action if they discover a leak. And then below the leak detection system, they have a secondary liner system. There's arrows there, so there's the 60 mil HDPE geomembrane,
Okay.
and then the imported soil, 12 inches of compacted clay.
Yep.
And then in some of the areas where, going back to that figure up front, where there's shallow bedrock, it still meets the rules, so they're going beyond the rules again. They're augmenting that secondary liner with additional clay.
So they don't have to do this.
They don't have to do it. They've gone beyond the rules on this. So I think that's, typically when CES is recommending a new landfill, we recommend leak detection, secondary liner system. It costs a little bit more money.
Right.
It's not required, but it pays off in the long run because you're not worried about leaks and groundwater contamination.
Right.
So I thought that was good news to the city. I think
Absolutely.
it will make our report that they are going beyond the design standards. So that's that brief little visual package. Just wanted to mention that again, it's the initial application, I think, was 5,500 pages. The supplemental package was 500 pages. So there's a lot of materials. We're looking at title right or interest, financial ability, technical ability, traffic, buffers, existing uses and scenic character, air quality, surface water quality, natural resources, erosion control, groundwater, utilities, flooding, stormwater, the solid waste management hierarchy. Public benefit we are not looking at because we were told by the BEP it's already been decided on?
That's right. DEP already made that decision, it's already been appealed, the appeal's been decided, and
Don't bring it up again.
Don't bring it up again.
don't want to know.
Wow.
So the materials are all on their website, on the DEP's website, that all of the appeal process, the decision process, so.
So I just keep looking at the figure 1-3. So at the end of the years, it's all just gonna be one big mountain.
Yep.
Just like you see when you're on the interstate, when you drive by Hamden.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you have some benefits over Hamden, it's further
I
away.
was just saying, perfect for skiing.
Yeah.
Just don't disturb the cap.
Oh. We're trying to make a little money here.
I hear you.
Okay, so, thank you, sir. Questions from the council for Dennis?
That improved liner system is only on the expansion, right?
Correct.
Probably can't go back, can you?
Oh, I know, but
Or can you? You probably can't go back
You
and put.
can't. It's all permitted. I think Phase 10 hasn't been built yet.
Something over there.
Number
That
10.
one hasn't been built yet. It's already been permitted.
Oh,
They're talking about constructing this new expansion, I think in 2017, 18.
but the only
Probably
thing,
early 2018.
but the only thing you guys can deal with is the 11 through
That's right, that is.
16.
11 through
I would say
16.
You couldn't ask them for it, but it meets the standards, it's permitted. They do have an underdrain system under there, so they have been monitoring that, and it looks, I did go back to look at that, and as it relates to this new, if you can envision, this is kind of at a 3-dimension here, there's gonna be a side slope right here, and there's gonna be waste that's gonna be placed over the orange line, because it's gonna fill in that. I'm not doing a very good job explaining
I know
that.
what you mean.
So I was worried about the increased pressure
Yeah.
if there is a leak
Oh.
pushing out into that underdrain system, and I've looked at that data and it looks pretty good. Yeah, so it looks like it's working as far as groundwater.
We do have a couple questions. Ed or Chuck, any questions for Dennis right now? What he just presented?
Not all, I know this is going to seem very far-fetched, but I've heard people who really know geology and like glacial geology, and there are, I guess, and I have a Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies, so geology is not my field. But there are concerns that due to the extreme weight and the constant compaction, that it could actually depress the earth, not just part of the earth as we think of it, right? You know, as you prepare for it, but that it could actually do what the glaciers did, was because a mile thick of ice, they pushed the whole ground, the whole crust of the earth. Is that right, Chuck? Anyways, they depressed, and in places in Maine, ever so slowly, the ground is rising, and hopefully keep up with sea level rise, right? But the danger, and I did some rough calculations on what a mile of ice would weigh, right? And my figures, if you counter what's everything that's approximately, this is like a year or two ago, so, you know, whatever's in there already, approximately equals what a mile of ice would be. But if that mile of ice was concentrated on 1 acre instead of spread over, you know, this stuff is spread over 50 acres or whatever it is right now. So I don't know who, you know, if you have anybody on staff who was taking those kind of courses, that's one concern. And I guess I'm kind of concerned with, you know, yeah, so now we get the better liner after, you know, it's halfway there. And I forgot one question for you, Jim. And you don't have to answer today or anything, but it was my understanding that the way the state contract with Casella works, right, is that if there is no capacity, their operator's contract expires. So Casella always says we have a 30-year contract with the state, and I think that's true, but only if there's capacity. And it's at Casella's risk, obligation, and expense to achieve that permitted capacity.
I'll take a look at this.
I think it's in the OSA.
Certainly, they're applying for the expansion was a condition of the contract.
Right,
And,
right,
they've been doing
right.
that in order to create the capacity for the state.
And Dennis, if when I've read more, I'll share concerns with Bill, and he can.
I have a question for you,
Sure.
If we're looking at a mile of ice, how about Manhattan and all those huge concrete structures are sitting on that? Why isn't that sinking?
Good question.
Could be.
I would think there'd be more
That's a
cement
jo-
on Manhattan
Right.
than there is
And
garbage.
the
up
other
here.
thing about here, though, is that it's not just like a non-moving surface, because they're, to the landfill operator, space is money. The more empty space there is, then the more you can pack in that space. So they've always compacting it with that giant machine. So that can be a factor too. But I know, like I said, it's far-fetched, but when, after it sinks, it's,
Question on the compaction, if they do such a great job compacting, how come it settles? In fact, Hampton's still settling about 7 or 8
It
feet
is.
a year.
it
So
does.
they couldn't have compacted it too much.
That's right. That's right. So the thing is kind of alive because it's breaking down inside
Yeah.
time. And I think the size of ours now is about equal to what Hamden is, like 6.6 million cubic. And so if this gets expanded, which will basically double the size of it, it'll end up being 3 times the size of Hamden, roughly. So.
Thank you, Ed.
Just a brief response to Ed is that there are detailed sections on stability, settlement, and stability and settlement monitoring. That is part of the submittal, and we have
There we
reviewed
go.
that. We haven't had any concerns about it, but I will make sure that we're looking at it.
Appreciate that.
Glacial till's generally more stable than a clay situation. I don't know if you've heard about the Norwich Walk situation they had years ago, but that was a clay situation. So glacial till typically is more stable. So we will take a hard look at that to make sure that that's not going to be a concern.
Thank you very much. Good questions. Okay, so where do we go from here? You got your hearing next month.
Right, and that's just going to be a sit-down, everyone's going to be presenting the issues that they're, as interveners. Ed may have issues, other bodies may have issues, Alton may have an issue, and we'll all set those out. When it was time to decide whether or not, when DEP had to decide whether or not it could take the Merck waste from Biddeford and bring it to JRL, the city's position was, we don't oppose the application.
Right.
We don't support it, we don't oppose it, we don't oppose it.
Right.
And left it at that. I think it's fair to say here, and Dennis will say if I've got it wrong, but the application that's been presented has been reviewed. It's been reviewed on legal grounds, it's been reviewed on technical grounds. The application complies with state law and in some aspects, as Dennis has mentioned, exceeds the requirements of state law. We understand the council's charge is to look out for the residents, the citizens of the city of Old Town. Make sure that if this is going to go through, if this is going to occur, that we're going to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. From our review, it seems as though this is in accord with state law, exceeds some of the requirements of state law, so that it would be appropriate if the council so decides to say, we don't oppose it, we have a few concerns. We have concerns about traffic. We want to see the state pull its load on this, and I have my direction there. And we want to take a look at some of the issues just to make sure there's no subsidence issue, and take a look too at the hydrogen sulfide just to make sure that all that is okay from the fines. But other than that, there's nothing that would cause the city to oppose the application.
Right.
Does that sound like a fair position for the council to take on this?
I mean, that's all along. I think that's
the councils that were running before this, that's how everybody felt. As long as we dotted the i's, crossed the t's, made sure we were all set, everybody was safe, and it complied with state and all the other regulations that we weren't opposed to. We just want to make sure all those ducks were in order. So I feel pretty sure that's how we still feel now. Nothing's changed with anybody new here.
All right, then. Any
And
other
so
questions?
testifying is going to be
think-
Jim, you, and Bill?
I'll be putting it together and leading the team. Bill and Dennis will be on the hot
And
seat.
Dennis will be also. Okay. Yep. Okay. Okay, good. Oh,
If there are any questions tonight, great. If there are things that come to mind afterwards, you know my email, and so does Bill, so don't hesitate.
I think one thing stirring for sure in everybody's mind too is that third party. So if, I know Stan's suggesting if we can just check into that and see about that. Because like I said, the night it was presented to us, it was more, I think everybody walked away with the fact that we would have control of what happens there. So everybody was kind of comfortable with that. But as you pointed out, that's
wanna
forever.
We want to make sure someone pays the bill.
Yes.
So, all right, I'll get in touch with the state, and we'll try to work that through.
Any other questions? We good?
I'm just a happy man.
Oh, my God.
Real quick.
Yes.
I think probably for the city of Old Town, you're doing the right thing, protect the health, the welfare, the environment. So I think if we have concerns, like now's really the time to raise them before the final testimony has to be in, which is probably like in August.
Right.
And the other thing to remember though is, like, ordinarily I would be at some point coming to you and saying, please vote whether you really want this thing or not.
Right.
But in our host community agreement, there's a clause in there that says that if the Old Town City Council votes to oppose the landfill expansion, Casella, the operator, has the right to
Stop paying
withhold
us.
payments.
Absolutely. That's been said every year.
Not forever.
Right.
So, and of course, from my perspective, that's, goes against America and, our kind of, if our democracy. But
Right.
you should be aware of it, so I'm not going to ask you to oppose it.
Well, no, this was
But-
brought, I think you brought this up a couple of years ago. Same
Oh,
thing
yeah.
came out of it. It's the
Yeah.
council felt the
And I
same, and
wish-
it's always going to be
I
that
wish I
way.
knew someone who could look at that and see if that's
Well,
even a,
I want to be clear about that, just because you brought it up before, Ed, and I appreciate it.
yeah.
It doesn't stop the city from being opposed to it at the DEP level. What it
Right.
does say is if the city goes beyond DEP and BEP and goes to court, goes on appeals, then for as long as those appeals are active, we
They don't have to
lose
pay,
that
right.
payment.
Right.
So I don't feel muzzled. I hope the city doesn't feel muzzled.
No.
I see.
As far as looking at the application and making comments on it, as we're doing tonight. Whether or not to actually oppose the application is the prerogative of the council.
Right.
Given that this application does meet the standards, that probably wouldn't be appropriate. But what is appropriate is to make sure that we raise the issues we do have to protect the public.
Right.
And bring those forward, and I view that as our charge and our responsibility on behalf of the council to do that.
Absolutely. Great, we appreciate it. Okay, thank you, everyone. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Jan,
Thank you very much.
all in favor?
Yeah.
None opposed.